SSR hunters are good and all, but not everyone can have them, so they have to resort to using lower rarity characters, which is why today I'll be going over all the 5 best SR hunters in the game that all players, new and experienced, should consider building and using. And the first character on this list is going to be Park as Park is an ultimate spamming DPS based character. And she's honestly one of, if not the only character that's all about this. As basically with her passive, whenever she uses Airball, Wind Shear, Air Cutter, or Wind Vortex, she recovers her power gauge, which is just your ultimate gauge, by 8%, and then her cooldown of Windstorm, which is her ultimate, is then decreased by 30%. So that means instead of her ultimate cooldown being 45 seconds, it'll be around 32 seconds, 33 seconds, I believe. And then when it comes to actually duping her out, she honestly just becomes even better. As basically her first dupe is whenever she uses Air Cutter, she completely removes debuffs from her and her party, so she has cleansing as well, which is amazing. Her second dupe decreases the cooldown of Windstorm, being her ultimate again, by an additional 10%. And then when Park uses Airball, Wind Shear, Air Cutter, or Wind Vortex, the team members' power gauges refill by 10%. So if you're pairing her up with someone like Min Byung-gu, or just somebody like that who's just a really good support who likes to spam his ultimate as well, then you can also get his ultimate much faster to then be able to increase your damage of her, or just the damage in general, especially her ultimate as well, which makes this dupe just insane. And then her fourth dupe just increases the damage of her ultimate by 30%, and then her fifth dupe is probably one of her worst ones, to be honest, because it doesn't really matter too much, as you only just basically it will just fill your ultimate gauge by 100% at the very start, which is good, but it's not as good as some of the other ones. And then unfortunately, probably one of the only drawbacks about her kit as a whole is that pretty much that's all she does. All she does is spam her ultimate. She doesn't really apply anything with any of her skills, as you can see right here, and the same also goes for even her QTE skill and also her ultimate as well. They just all just do damage. But her support skill is actually really good, as basically, well, see, this is the skill you'll use with Jinwoo, and you'll be able to recover the team members' power gauge by 15%, and then when the skill is used, you'll apply the breeze effect, which basically, and then when it's used, you'll remove debuffs on team members. So not only are you giving Jinwoo more ultimate charge, but also removal of debuffs as well. And then also what she's applying through her support skill as well is the breeze buff, which basically increases ultimate skill damage by 15%, and that lasts for 20 seconds. So you have a good amount of time to get your ultimate up within that time if you're still missing a little bit of your ult charge on Jinwoo, which overall for me, in my opinion, makes Park Hee-jun one of, if not maybe the best SR hunter in the game. Next up, we probably have the best SR tank character probably in the game, which is going to be Kim Chol, or he's definitely one of the best anyways. As Kim Chol is a character who supports you a lot through things like his ultimate and his ability to stun through his QTE skill, and also his second basic skill as well, but there's still much more to his kit. As essentially his passive basically says when shield jump or fierce roar, which are basically these two skills right here, you'll be able to apply the impenetrable effect, which basically will just create a shield equal to 2.5% of the user's defense, and that'll last for 10 seconds, so you'll be able to make a pretty decent shield with that, or a decent enough shield anyways. And then I guess we should talk about his skills, because that's how you activate his passive, as shield jump is basically just on an 8-second cooldown, so a very short cooldown skill, and it will just deal weak break damage, and will do 484% of the user's defense. And then you have fierce roar, which is on a 12-second cooldown, but does way more break damage, as it does heavy break damage with much higher damage. But what it also does, it basically says when the final hit lands, you'll be able to stun the target, which is a 3-second stun, whilst also applying a defense increase, which is a 30% defense increase for 10 seconds as well onto himself, which is really good. So then when you get him duped out, what's actually really good is with once you get his first dupe, you can use the effective shield jump, which is going to be able, this skill right here, you'll be able to use it 2 times, which is going to be really useful, so you can get more break damage that way. But what's probably even better about it is the fact that you get to decrease its cooldown by 2 seconds, which will make it go from 8 seconds all the way down to 6 seconds, which means it's going to be one of the lowest cooldown skills in the game. And then the second dupe just increases his defense by 6%, it's decent, whatever. And then his third dupe, when tagging out, which basically when you switch out with him or use your QT skill, etc., whatever, then you'll be able to apply the impenetrable effect onto the entire team, which will give a shield equal to 8% of the user's defense for to the entire team, which will last for 10 seconds, and then the cooldown of it will be 30 seconds, so pretty much you've only got to wait 20 seconds to reapply this. And then his fourth dupe, which increases HP by 8%, which is not as good because it doesn't really utilize the HP stat as much. And then his fifth dupe basically says the defense decrease effect is applied through shield jump as well, which is this skill, so this skill will also decrease your enemy's defense as well. And that is a 16% decrease for 10 seconds, which is pretty good. And then finally, my favorite thing about Kim Chol as a whole is just he's a really good supporting tank-based character, as his ultimate faction of the shield will basically create a shield for himself and allies and stuff like that, and he'll put down like this sort of like zone that you can stand in to receive a damage reduction of 30%, as well as the shield equal to 25% of allies' defense in the zone. So overall, Kim Chol is a fantastic supportive tank-based character, giving you damage reduction, a ton of CC well as defense increases, and also some very spammable skills, which allows him to get his ultimate much faster than normal. Namche Young is up next, and she has a lot of similar properties to what Kim Chul does, but is somewhat different. As first of all, obviously Namche Young is a ranger character, so she's going to have a lot of ranged damage, which is going to be very useful. But all of her potential comes through actually freezing the enemy targets, as she has a huge amount of ways to freeze your enemies, as you have your first basic skill on an 8-second cooldown, which will freeze for 2 seconds. You have your QTE skill, which is another freeze for 2 seconds whilst doing medium break damage. You have your support skill, which freezes for 2 seconds and does medium break damage. And then you have her ultimate as well, which also freezes for 2 seconds as well. And that's pretty much the story of her whole kit. You freeze, you do break damage, and that is it, as pretty much her passive just increases the damage that she deals to frozen targets by 20%, whatever, very nice. But what's also really useful about this character is her first dupe, as you can increase the user's break effectiveness by 20%, so she'll do 20% more break damage, which makes her really, really good for against enemies that like to replenish their break meter. Second dupe, she'll increase her HP by 6%, which is very nice as she does scale off of HP. Her third dupe just increases the damage of light freezing arrow by 80%, which is her ultimate right here. So not like the best dupe in the world, but it's still decent. And then her fourth dupe will increase the explosion range of, I believe, her 2 basic skills as well as her QTE skill as well. And then her final dupe will basically increase the freeze duration on all of her skills from 2 seconds all the way to 3 seconds, which is going to be really, really useful. As pretty much, if for example, if you're spamming her skill 1, basically, you'll only have, well, like 5 seconds of downtime where the skill is not up, so, and like you're not freezing an enemy with this skill, which is going to be really, really good. So yeah, overall, she's just an absolute CC monster and just does a ton of break damage whilst also being able to have a ton of CCing abilities as well. Hwang Dong-suk is the penultimate character on this list, and although he's not very liked by many people in the series, regardless, he's still a really good character in this game. As to be honest, it seems like a theme of all the best SR hunters in the game just do a ton of break damage, and that's pretty much it, as Hwang Dong-suk is nowhere near different to the last couple of characters in this list. As Dong-suk is also a tank, but of the dark typing, which gives him a decent amount of value, as the only other dark breaking character I believe in the game is Lim Tae-gyu, so that's pretty much it. But what I like about Hwang Dong-suk is that he can actually support you with a bit more damage as opposed to what some other tanks can do, as basically on his passive, whenever his HP is 75% or higher, he'll increase his skill damage by 16%, and then if his HP is below 50%, he'll apply Lizard's Vitality, which will recover 2.5% of his HP every 1 second, and then that will last for 10 seconds, but only activates once for every stage. So that means you'll be able to get a ton of extra damage through all of his skills right here, and he's a HP scaler as well. But honestly, it's really his dupes where he like shines like a ton, as his first dupe is honestly amazing because whenever he uses Enhance, which is this skill right here, you'll be able to reset the cooldown of Scorching Shield, which is his second basic skill, and then while the Enhance buff is active, you'll be able to decrease the cooldown of Scorching Shield by a further 50% as well. But what's also really good is the Enhance buff as well also decreases it by another 40% as well. So yeah, Scorching Shield is going to become very easy to use and you'll just be able to spam it a ton, and what's really good about this is that it will apply heavy break damage. His second dupe is not so important as it just increases his HP by 8%, but again, as I mentioned before, he is a HP scaler, so it will be useful. And then his third dupe basically says when he uses Enhance, he'll be able to apply a shield, which is 20% of his max HP, which is going to make him ridiculously tanky, because the Enhance effect also increases his max HP by 30%, so you're just going to get a really fat shield because of it. And then his fourth dupe basically decreases the cooldown of Mighty Attack by 25%, which is his ultimate skill, which does a stun for 3 seconds, so you'll be able to stun pretty consistently with it. And then finally, his final dupe is also pretty cool. It's a little bit gimmicky, as basically whenever you use your ultimate, you'll have a 50% chance to fully reset its cooldown, which will then have a cooldown of 30 seconds of being able to apply that reset cooldown, which is kind of cool. It's whatever. It's a bit gimmicky. It's nothing too crazy. So yeah, overall, Hwang Dong-suk is honestly just someone that just offers a huge amount of break damage and is a little bit more offensive thanks to his passive being able to increase his skill damage and his ability to have a relatively somewhat more of a spammable ultimate thanks to his fourth and fifth dupe. But it's really with his enhanced buff and using his enhancement skill is where he does really shine, as he can just spam his other skill, Scorching Shield, just a ton, and so you can do a bunch of break damage to get rid of your enemy's break meters as fast as possible. Alright, last but certainly not least, we have Kang Tae-shik, and Kang Tae-shik is honestly a monster of a DPS as well, as unlike Park Hee-jin, Kang Tae-shik, instead of having all of his damage revolve around his ultimate, his revolves around applying the bleed debuff, as basically his passive says whenever dagger toss, tracking, or assault hits, which are basically his basic skill and his second basic skill as well as his QTE skill, you'll be able to apply the bleed effect. And then because you're able to apply this bleed, you're able to do a ton of damage, as his bleed will deal damage equal to 0.6% of their current HP every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. And as we know from characters like Baek Yoonho and through weapons like the Cascade Venom Fang, we do know the bleed debuff is really powerful powerful, so it's right there just makes him extremely powerful as well. But just like a lot of good SR hunters, it's really his dupes where he does get a lot of extra bonuses, and it makes him go from being decent to really good. As his first dupe offers him a 15% attack increase for 10 seconds whenever he attacks a bleeding target, and it doesn't say there's a cooldown on this, so this could technically just be permanent, I believe. Then his second dupe just increases his attack by 5%, always good. Third dupe, when tracking hits a target inflicted with bleed, you'll be able to apply the damage taken increase effect, which is a 15% damage taken increase, which is really good, and it will last for 10 seconds. His fourth dupe just decreases both of his skill cooldowns by 10%, which is amazing. And I'm not too sure if this actually includes his ultimate, but I would imagine so, because it is technically a skill, so I would imagine it includes this as well. But overall, it's really his final dupe where he just gets a massive amount of damage increases, as basically whenever Kang Taeshik uses camouflage, which is his ultimate, and then whenever he uses that ultimate on a bleeding target, which as we've found out is really easy to do, then you'll be able to increase the damage of it by 100%, which is just essentially doubling its damage completely. And with this ultimate already having a decently high enough multiplier of 3,500 of his attack, you'll be able to then double that to the damage that this will then do, so you're just doing a huge amount of damage. So there you have it. I think those are the probably around the 5 best, or some of the 5 best hunters within the game that you definitely should consider building, whether you're a new or experienced player. So if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe, as it helps a ton, and click the link down below to support me as a creator, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace!